Welcome to another edition of Trunk and Tales as we navigate what is happening in the world of national politics. I'm Stacy Smith, and I ask that you hit the like or the subscribe button on whatever platform you happen to be using. Coming up, my panelists will give their opinions about President Trump's efforts to try to bring about peace in Ukraine. Also, you may be surprised about what they have to say about the redistricting process in Texas and our way too early predictions about who the nominees will be for the presidential election in 2028. It's coming up in this edition of Trunk and Tales. And with me to talk about this in this edition of Trunk and Tales are two of my panelists, the political analysts and experts, and they are, on the Republican side, the former governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Corbett. Mr. Corbett also served as the state attorney general and as the U.S. attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania. Mr. Corbett teaches law now at Duquesne University. Also teaching law at Duquesne University and on the Democratic side is Joe Mistick. Joe's background includes consulting Democrats across the state and serving in city government. Joe teaches law at Duquesne, as I just mentioned, and you can read his thoughts on life and politics every Sunday in the Tribune Review. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us in another edition of Trunk and Tales. A lot has happened since the last time we gathered, and so let's go back just a couple of days. On Friday, August the 15th, President Trump was roundly criticized for what many believed was giving in to Russian President Putin in Mr. Trump's efforts to try to end the war in Ukraine. By Monday evening, the tone had changed for many after Ukrainian President Zelensky and top leaders in Europe flew to Washington and met with the president and offered him praise for his efforts, showing a united front by Ukraine, Europe, and the United States. So, Joe, I'm going to start with you. What's your take on this as a Democrat, as to what happened?
Well, you know, Trump's visuals were terrible at this meeting with Putin. He looked like a fanboy. He looked like he was just thrilled to meet his hero. I think a lot of observers, including some Republicans, including some people on Fox News, pointed it out that this was sort of a disaster. There was no there there. They were to meet for hours as anticipated. They ended up meeting for a very short period of time. I think Putin just started it off by telling them there's no deal here unless I get everything I want. And that was the end of the so-called peace talks. So it was a disaster. Fortunately, Europe sees this as enough of a threat that all the leaders of Western Europe dropped what they were doing and flew to Washington, D.C. to be with President Zelensky when he met with President Trump. And I think that sort of changed the direction, or at least tempered, at least slowed down the direction in which the administration had been headed.
All right, I'm going to ask you another question, but first let's hear from Governor Corbett. Governor?
I wouldn't disagree with Joe in that analysis at all. And now watching the president in his first year of his second term, I've come to my own conclusion that he who talks to the president last probably has the best chance of getting what they want. And you know, we see that. Joe probably agrees with me. In talking with certain judges, you always knew you wanted to be the last one to talk to that judge. That's the impression I get here right now. He's unpredictable in where he's going to go. His behavior to Zelensky months ago in the White House, the Oval Office, was completely opposite to what it was this time. So he makes himself very difficult to predict what he's going to do. Maybe that's intentional. Maybe he's spur of the moment, whatever comes to mind. I would hate to be a staff member trying to figure out where he was going to go next.
So neither one of you will give him any credit at this point for having some sort of grand plan to try to do this.
He could have a grand plan, but he's not communicating it very well to anybody.
When you
hang on.
Joe Biden down, when Joe Biden might have vacillated, no one wanted to hear that he had some mysterious grand plan.
Maybe not.
And nobody, I think, no reasonable person believes that Trump has a grand plan here. It's nice, his followers will ascribe that ability to him, but he's a bumbler, and he's bumbled through this thing, and nothing's come of it, and nothing will.
So at this point, what do you think, both of you think is going to be happening as far as the war in Ukraine goes?
I think the war continues until such time as Putin runs out of gas, if indeed he does. There's been no pressure by this administration to get him to stop the bombing. He continued the bombing. In fact, the bombing had an uptick while he was in Alaska speaking with President Trump. That's not only disrespectful and perhaps even immoral, but it is certainly contrary to what one would want to do if you were seeking peace.
And Putin has probably analyzed the president in this respect. The president makes threats, and then he backs away from them. Then he makes threats again about what he could do, and he could have a huge impact on the economy of Russia, but he backs away from them. So if you were an individual in Putin's shoes, why would you think that he's going to change his method of operation at this point in time? What would you be afraid of? I don't think anything.
All right, well, let's move on to another subject from the international to domestic matters. Governor, I'll start with you on this one. Should the president, and you were governor, so you had the ability to do this as well within the state, should the president be sending in federal troops to help patrol the streets of Washington, D.C.?
Well, Stacy, I was a member of the Pennsylvania Army National Guard for 13 and a half years, so I certainly had the familiarity with the Guard. And I was a staff judge advocate there, so I was one of the lawyers within the 28th Infantry Division. The president has the ability to call the National Guard up in Pennsylvania and around the country when there is a national emergency. He has not declared a national emergency here, but D.C. is the District of Columbia. It's not a state. And everything I've read, he does have more ability to bring people up. Interesting to note that he doesn't have them carrying any firearms. I feel sorry for the National Guardsmen who are walking around unarmed at this point in time. They, in my opinion, that isn't the smartest thing to do. But he has the ability to do that, and he continues to make decisions that are contrary to what most people would think is the appropriate way of handling the National Guard.
Joe.
Yeah, I think from a PR perspective, it's probably another shrewd move by President Trump. A lot of people believe that Washington, D.C. and other cities are crime-ridden and that there's not a concerted effort on the part of the leaders of those cities to tamp down crime because of wokeness or some other liberal notion. I think he scores points here. But, the fact is that statistics will show that crime is down in Washington, D.C. Is it down all the way? No, it never will be down all the way. You're not going to eliminate crime. But he can, he can score some points with his followers by doing something like this. It never hurts to have more eyes on the streets. I've advocated for the city police to bring in our deputy sheriffs from the county jurisdiction and county police to put more police officers on our streets. I think that would make a difference. It remains to be seen if this makes a difference.
Stacy, let me interrupt you there. From a strategic standpoint, if I was sitting in that position, God forbid that, before I would bring the National Guard in, I would have demonstrated that crime is not down, that the statistics are being adjusted in a favorable way, and there's certainly a great deal of press on that subject as to not reporting crime so that your crime numbers are down. Put that out there before I made this kind of action. But Mr. Trump likes to just, in my opinion, an idea comes into his head and he shoots from the hip on it.
Well, he put troops also in L.A., and I believe they have now been withdrawn, if I'm not mistaken. And it did help kind of quell some of the rioting, or maybe I'm just misjudging what happened there.
Yeah, the rioting in L.A. was confined to maybe a 2 or 3 block area.
Mm-hmm. And they were...
Rioting was... you have to take a general view of that term to say that there was uncontrolled rioting going on at the time. But it was an excuse for him, and he could point to anything. And he made it look like all of L.A. was in flames, when in fact this was a very, very, very tiny uprising, and it was within the power of the Los Angeles Police Department, one of the finest police departments in the country, to quell it on their own. But he again, PR move, not a bad one.
Okay, we'll let that one go. Moving on, let's keep on with politics if we can. And that is, of course, the nitty gritty of politics is on display as Texas is going to redistrict or change its congressional districts, which will, in the end, give the GOP 5 more seats in the Texas delegation to Washington. That, of course, drew a response from the governor of California, in which he is proposing California also redistrict and give the Democrats 5 more seats. For a lot of people, of course, this is just a lot of political BS. But from your two perspectives, just how important is this redistricting and the challenges and possible more redistricting taking place outside of the usual 10-year census?
I'm going to defer to my colleague since he's been involved in redistricting here in Pennsylvania and let him go first.
Well, you have to start with the acknowledgement that redistricting is as pure a political process as we have in our system of government. So I'm not alarmed by these moves. I'm not surprised. I accept the process for what it is, and I think that Governor Newsom in California has come up with a very fine way of countering this initiative to reapportion in Texas. So this is part of the traditional, the customary pushing and shoving that goes on, political pushing and shoving that goes on in terms of redistricting. It's going to put some people in a very tough spot. There are legislators in Illinois who are not Illinois so much, but I think in Indiana who are pushing back. They don't want to upset the apple cart. Things are uncertain when you start something like this in midstream. I've served as counsel to the Democratic caucus in the Pennsylvania legislative redistricting, and I served on 2 districting panels when the city went to council by district, and the county created a county council. And you're not going to take politics out of this. It's just one more weapon in everyone's political bag of weapons.
And Joe just used a very important word when he said weapon, and that's exactly what this is. And the most popular term I hear now is the weaponization of this or that. And that's exactly what is happening here. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that they can't do what they are doing, that changing the time to redistrict. It'd be a little harder to do it here in Pennsylvania because we do have a commission. The legislature can't do it by itself, but some states you can do it by themselves. And I think this is I don't think it's good for stability that we're looking at possibly having redistricting every time a new president comes in because they want to see more people in, obviously, more votes on their side of the aisle.
My view is if you don't like the fact that the other party has taken control of redistricting and is using it to their political advantage, then do better in the next cycle of elections. Get more, put up better candidates, make a more compelling argument to the voters, and you take control. So I don't have a lot of patience for either party when they complain that this is unfair because the other party is using the power that the voters have given them. It is a political process. Places that have tried to eliminate politics from redistricting have never done so successfully. At some point, some politician has to appoint members of a redistricting commission, so-called independent redistricting commission, and you have a hard time getting away from politics because it's a political process at heart.
All right. Pennsylvania can't do it, you say, right now. I believe California has to put something up before the voters to be able to change the redistricting. I mean, to redistrict outside of the regular time period that is given. So, Joe, I'll ask you this question, and the governor. One of the things that happened, of course, in Pennsylvania recently was that the redistricting issue went before the state Supreme Court.
Right.
And so was politics involved at that point as well? Since you said redistricting is politics?
Here's our situation, generally speaking. This is the way our government is set up, okay? We have three branches of government. Legislatively, as long as the legislature does not violate certain basic tenets of our Constitution, both our state and our federal constitutions, they can successfully redistrict to their political advantage. But when you violate those basic tenets, like one person, one vote, for instance, then it's up to the courts to be the tiebreaker, the referee, the governor on those things. And that's what the courts did in Pennsylvania. So we have a pretty good map. I wouldn't complain about Pennsylvania's map. Democrats are still on the short end. They used to be on the very short end in terms of number of members of Congress, based upon how many races, how many votes they successfully turned out. But that's changed thanks to the court, and it's still, I think, in our advantage, a Republican advantage. But compete better. Come up. Target those districts and come at them harder and win those seats if you don't like it.
I agree. It is a political process, and even when it goes to the court, people will view it as political. The Democrats have the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, the majority in that. If they do something that the Republicans don't like, or it's vice versa, everybody will say it's political. It is a political process. And as Joe said, their basic tenets, one man, one vote, is a very important one that have to be followed. Beyond that, it's a political process.
Yep. Okay. No, I'll just, Joe, I like what you said there. You've got to do better. But when you have a state that such as Pennsylvania, the Democrats are centered, as they are, I guess, in most states, in the urban areas, and you get a state like Pennsylvania that the rest of the state tends to go red. Can Democrats really make any difference in there? You just have to grow the city and have more people go into an urban area to make a difference.
If you look at the map of Pennsylvania and the counties of Pennsylvania, what used to be red is now blue over in the southeast. What used to be blue out here, the counties surrounding Allegheny County, are now red. There's the movement of the population. That is then impacted, or does impact, redistricting and how the congressional districts look. Take a look at the size of the congressional district. Who's our congressman from up in Erie? I just lost his name.
Kelly.
He has a huge district geographically, but the district has to be based on similar populations of people. And, you get into the Southeast, there's many more Democrat congressmen from the Southeast, although I will note that two Republican congressmen, actually one in Bucks County is still there, and then Republicans gained a seat up in the Scranton-Wilkes-Barre area in this last election. I think the Republicans now have the majority of the congressmen in Pennsylvania. Joe, am I right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. It's closer now.
I was going to say it's pretty close, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's pretty close, and I think it's the closeness of it represents the fairness of the map under which we have been electing our members of Congress since the courts stepped in. So it's I can't complain. Democrats have a substantial, still but shrinking substantial registration edge in Pennsylvania. One might argue that they should have the majority of the members of Congress, but again, it gets down to district by district and the candidates that are put up and the issues that are there and how the candidates respond. At the end of the day, it's the will of the people. I think that the map we have now is a fair map.
Joe, I'm going to put this one mainly to you, and that is that basically, who do you think is going to be in control, if I can call it control, maybe more, which side's going to be more favored within the Democratic Party moving forward. The reason I asked that, of course, is this Mamdani guy in New York City. Apparently, Minneapolis has also a quote unquote Democratic socialist running for mayor. Are we seeing an upsurge in this, or is it just the the time period before the next term?
Well, I think it'll ebb and flow, around the country as based upon the local issues. And these more local elections can turn on a dime. The issues are way different than they are nationally, even though national issues tend to encroach. I see us moving away from the Democratic Socialist movement here in Allegheny County. Other places who've tried that and who's have forayed into that political ideology have tended to pull back since then. So I just think it's going to ebb and flow over time.
Governor, any comments on the opposing party? Seem to have lost the governor there. So, Joe, until we get the governor back, I will stay with you. Josh Shapiro will be up in 2026, I believe, and there's now a Republican challenger, and that would be Stacy Garrity. Does she stand a chance in your estimation? Now, I know you're on the Democratic side, but does she stand a chance?
Well, anybody who gets in the race and receives their party's nomination stands a chance. I don't know much about Stacy Garrity, and that tells you where we are right now.
She's state treasurer, but that's about all. Yeah.
Right.
How often do you know much about those four offices?
The state treasurer a lot. Now,
Right.
I see Josh Shapiro on social media in these little video clips 5 times a day. So he's out there. He's a known commodity. He's well thought of. I think he's well thought of by both parties because he's running the state in a business-like fashion. So she has an uphill battle challenging that and trying to overcome that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Governor, can you hear us at all? We seem to have lost the governor for some reason. We can see him, but apparently he cannot hear us for whatever reason. So, Joe, I'll ask you, and I'll get back with the governor at some point here. Which 3 people at this moment are the possible presidential nominees for each party? We're going to continue to do this,
Sure.
every once in a while. So it's very, very early, and I understand that, but who would you say?
Well, Gavin Newsom, obviously, he's taken a national position. Josh Shapiro, our own governor here in Pennsylvania, will be a competitor for that nomination. He dodged a bullet when he did not take the vice presidential slot last time out, and he's an astute politician. But I think that's preserved his candidacy for the future race. J.B. Pritzker, I think, is another tremendous candidate, and I'm going to pick a 4th one.
Okay.
There's a fella named James Tallarico who's a state legislator in Texas. He's a minister. They tried to redistrict him out of office in the past. He ran in a new district and won. He's a compelling speaker, and I think he strikes just the right tone in terms of values and in his positions on the big issues. I'd urge everyone to go to YouTube and take a look at James Tallarico in his speeches to the legislative body in Texas.
I think we've got the governor back. I'm going to go to
back.
you. All right, I'll get you in just a second here.
Stacy beat me up while you were gone.
Oh, yeah, beat you up.
I was watching. Nobody beat you up, Joe.
Joe, that would be quite a leap for a state legislator.
Huge leap, but of course we elected a peanut farmer president in the past. Strange things have been happening lately. We have a reality TV star president now, so it's a leap, yeah, but not unheard of, not impossible.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Governor, I'll go back to you and have you answer some of these questions that I asked Joe, and that way we'll make sure you've got your fair chance here. And that is that as far as the Democratic Party goes, who may be controlling it down the road here because of the surge, apparently, of the Socialist Democrats in New York and also now it appears in Minneapolis. Your thoughts about the opposing party?
I think the Democrats are going through growing pains and direction pains. The traditional Democrats have fractured, as have Republicans in that respect. I think that we have a new generation coming in to the Democrats that are taking the party to further to the left. I don't think the country is there. I think there is, and all you have to do is look at the registration edge here in Pennsylvania for independents now. Over 1 million people registered as a third party or an independent, reducing the numbers of Republicans and Democrats in that respect. So I think the Democrats are in for a difficult time coalescing behind one individual person at this point in time. If I were looking at the people, and I made some notes on this, obviously our governor, it appears to be running for president at this point in time. Gretchen Whitmer would be a potential candidate out there. And the governor of California certainly has talked about. I'm looking for who's the surprise candidate, and it sounds like maybe I missed Joe telling me that he has a surprise candidate in there.
Yeah, I was talking about James Tallarico, who's a state representative in Texas, a formidable public speaker, really has a really refined approach to the issues, and he's all over social media, all over YouTube, and I just urge everyone to check him out. I think he has really some really good future political stock.
And that's an interesting point that Joe brings up is social media. It does get your message out there. You probably know where I am on social media. Nobody knows what's true now and what's not true because of social media. You can see anything you want. There's no filter in it with what people say. And oftentimes social media recovers, they find things later that you said that contradict what you're saying now. But I think it is the new way of campaigning. And you're going to see the individuals who put advertising on television, it still continues, but that's more for the boomer generation than it is for this present generation, the younger generation right now. They're getting their information from social media, whether it's true or not.
Well, at some point, the tables will switch here a little bit, or the balancing of this, because as it stands, the boomers are more likely to vote. At least that's the way it always has been. The older the person, the more likely they're going to vote, as opposed to the younger person. But that could also be changing because social media, I think, could push more people to the polls.
Well, Stacy, it's changing because we're aging out.
Right.
There are fewer of us to get out and vote.
Unfortunately, yes, you're right about that. Governor, we don't have a lot of time, but I do have one more question for both of you. But before we get to that, I did ask Joe also that Shapiro is up in Pennsylvania in 2026. The Republicans now have a candidate in Stacy Garrity. First of all, from your perspective as running for governor on the Republican side, A, can she do it? And B, does she already have the backing of the statewide party?
Well, they have not done the endorsement on that. That's too soon. That will happen. It should happen it might happen as early as December, but usually in January is when that takes place. The only other potential candidate that I know of out there at the moment is Mastriano, who ran 4 years ago, was absolutely beaten up in the numbers by Shapiro. Shapiro, the governor, is an excellent campaigner. He's excellent use of social media, uses it quite heavily. But I think that Stacy is a foil to him in that respect. She has a career, a military career, in addition to what she's been doing in her work life. She's been doing a good job as the treasurer of Pennsylvania. She got easily reelected this past year to that position. It's going to come down to money. I suspect Shapiro is going to have an advantage on that. But I also think it's going to be determined by events beyond the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's going to be influenced by what the president and the Congress are doing. It could even be influenced what's going on around the world at that point in time.
Yep. Well, we'll see what the economy is, Joe, because that can make a big difference, as we saw, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. As I said, if you get the nomination of a major political party, no one should count you out. It's just that in terms of recognition, name recognition, she's way behind right now, and Shapiro is very well thought of. He's a popular governor.
Yep. Okay. Neither one of you mentioned on the Republican side who you think the three possible candidates would be at this moment in time. Governor, I'll start with you.
I think Rubio has done in the situation he's in as Secretary of State, he's done a pretty good job of having to balance all the interests and include the interest of his boss, the President of the United States. Youngkin is the governor of Virginia. He's not up for election. They only have one-term governors down there. He has quite a name for himself going on. I'm going to give you my curve from left field.
Okay.
And that's the governor of Georgia, Kemp. And we've already had a president from Georgia that nobody thought who was a governor of Georgia, who became president of the United States. I remember watching Mr. Kemp when he was campaigning for governor in the original, a year before the governor's race. And he had some very unusual ads on. I'm not going to go into the detail, but I said, this is an unusual candidate. And I think he is an unusual. Now he's calmed down a little bit. He's not as far right as he was in those commercials. But if people got behind him, he could attract a lot of people on the MAGA side of the party if he doesn't go too far into the center.
All right, Joe.
Well, I can't disagree with the governor, and nobody knows his party as well as he does. I would suggest that J.D. Vance appears to be positioning himself to be the candidate who inherits Trump world, MAGA world. I'm not sure the voters won't be too weary of that by then. They may very well be. He's not proven himself to be a pillar of stability in terms of his positions on the issues. He vacillates widely, has vacillated widely over the years. He seems to say whatever he needs to say at that time, in that situation. But I wouldn't count him out. He appears to be in a pretty good spot right now for someone who wants to inherit all that.
I think it's going to be very interesting to see when you have the White House Oval Office pictures, how close Rubio and J.D. Vance are going to be seated next to one another. And when, I think this may happen, when Rubio decides that he's going to resign as Secretary of State and possibly run. I think the governor is correct on that one. I think I see that one coming, but I don't know. Who knows?
So one additional thought. And this is, maybe I shouldn't even go here. If for some reason the president would step down, then it's definitely Rubio, because he would inherit the president's position, and it would be very difficult to run a primary against him.
You mean Vance or Rubio?
I mean, no, Vance. Vance would be inherit.
Yeah.
If I said Rubio, I apologize. I misspoke.
You're right. Okay, good. Gentlemen, we've taken a lot of time here to go over a lot of issues. I appreciate it so much. And thank you. And thank you for watching and this program or listening to it. And again, if you happen to be watching or listening to this program on whatever platform you happen to be using, I urge you hit the like or the subscribe button. But for right now, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again for the next edition of Trunk and Tales.